Good evening. Yesterday, August 6th, NOAA released its mid-season update to the Atlantic hurricane outlook. And for the second time this year, the message was the same. This is going to be a quiet season. The numbers are striking. Forecasters now expect 7 to 13 named storms for the entire year. In a normal season, you'd see 14. They expect 2 to 6 hurricanes against a normal of 7. And major hurricanes, Category 3 or stronger, they've put the range at 0 to 2. 0 is now considered a realistic outcome for an entire Atlantic hurricane season. NOAA puts the odds of a below normal season at 75%, near normal 20%, above normal 5%, and yet 2 storms have already formed this year. Neither of them reached hurricane strength, and one of them dropped record rainfall on Louisiana and spawned tornadoes along the Gulf Coast. That contradiction is the whole story tonight. Let's work through it. First, what's actually happened so far? The 2026 Atlantic season has produced 2 named storms, Arthur and Bertha, both formed in the Gulf. Neither became a hurricane. Arthur arrived in mid-June, developing in the warm Gulf waters off the Texas coast. It was the first named storm of the season. It never had the organization or the time over water to intensify into a hurricane, but it didn't need to. Arthur brought record rainfall to portions of Louisiana and spawned tornadoes along the Gulf Coast. Bertha followed, forming in the Gulf south of the Florida Panhandle and making landfall in St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana, the parish immediately east of New Orleans, and one of the areas hit hardest by Katrina. Ken Graham, the director of NOAA's National Weather Service, drew the obvious conclusion and stated it plainly. Inland rainfall, he said, is a major cause of damage from tropical storms and hurricanes, as Arthur demonstrated. His advice was to prepare for every storm projected to impact your area, even if it never reaches hurricane strength. That's not boilerplate. It's the correction to a genuine and dangerous misconception, and it's worth spending a minute on. We rank tropical systems using the Saffir-Simpson scale, Category 1 through 5. That scale measures exactly one thing: maximum sustained wind speed. It says nothing about the size of the storm, nothing about how fast it's moving, and nothing about how much rain it's carrying. Water is what kills people in tropical systems. Storm surge and inland freshwater flooding account for the overwhelming majority of tropical cyclone deaths in the United States, and the flooding threat has almost no relationship to the category number. A slow-moving tropical storm that stalls over a river basin will do more damage than a fast-moving Category 1 that's overland for 6 hours. Arthur is the proof, sitting right there at the top of this season's ledger. It never earned a category. It set rainfall records anyway. So why does NOAA expect the rest of the season to stay quiet? One answer, and it's a big one: El Niño. El Niño conditions emerged in the equatorial Pacific in June, and every month since, they've gotten stronger. Water temperatures in the El Niño monitoring region are now running more than 2 degrees Celsius above average, higher than they were at the same point in some of the strongest events on record, which is why you'll see the phrase Super El Niño appearing in coverage. Here's the mechanism, because it's genuinely elegant. El Niño is a warming of the eastern and central tropical Pacific, an ocean basin thousands of miles from the Atlantic. That warm water fuels enormous thunderstorm activity over the Pacific. Those thunderstorms alter the circulation of the upper atmosphere across the tropics, and that altered circulation increases vertical wind shear over the Atlantic. Wind shear is the difference in wind speed and direction between the lower and upper atmosphere. A hurricane needs to be vertically stacked, a coherent column of rotating air from the ocean's surface up through the top of the troposphere. That structure is what lets the storm's engine run. Warm, moist air rises, releases heat as it condenses and drives the whole system. Shear tears that column apart. The top of the storm gets pushed downwind of the bottom. The engine misfires. Storms either fail to form at all, or they form and can't strengthen. Matt Rosenkrantz, NOAA's lead hurricane season forecaster, described how dominant this factor is. When El Niño emerges, he said, it usually becomes the dominant factor in total hurricane season activity. And this El Niño continues to get stronger every month. Compared to a mature El Niño, he said, other mechanisms play a smaller role. Those other mechanisms are worth noting anyway. Atlantic sea surface temperatures are near average this year, not the record warm conditions that supercharged recent seasons. And the West African monsoon, which generates the tropical waves that seed most major Atlantic hurricanes, is neutral. Neither of those is pushing activity upward. Colorado State University's forecast team reached similar conclusions, projecting a below-average season and putting a 90% probability on a strong El Niño signal persisting through the August to October window, which is precisely the window that matters most. Now, the caveat, and it's the most important part of this broadcast: a seasonal outlook is not a landfall forecast. NOAA states this explicitly every single time, and it gets ignored every single time. The outlook tells you roughly how many storms will form across an entire ocean basin over 6 months. It tells you nothing about where any of them will go. Landfalls are governed by short-term steering patterns, the position of the Bermuda High, the timing of troughs coming off North America. And those patterns are only predictable about a week out. NOAA's National Hurricane Center issues tropical weather outlooks 7 days ahead and track forecasts for individual storms. And that is the appropriate timescale for a landfall question. History makes this vivid. 1992 was a well below normal season. It produced only 6 named storms. One of them was Hurricane Andrew, which came ashore in South Florida as a Category 5 and remained the costliest natural disaster in American history for years afterward. A quiet season with one landfall in your city is, for you, a catastrophic season. The statistics don't care where you live, and neither does the storm. There's a second reason not to relax. We are only now approaching the dangerous part of the calendar. The climatological peak of Atlantic hurricane season falls in early to mid-September. Historically, the stretch from mid-August through mid-October produces the large majority of Atlantic activity in nearly all of the major hurricanes. As of today, August 7th, the season is barely 2 months into a 6-month run and has not yet entered its core. NOAA's own framing acknowledged this. The update was issued specifically with the climatological peak approaching. 7 to 13 named storms with 2 already on the board leaves room for as many as 11 more, most of which would form in the weeks directly ahead. 21 names were assigned to this season by the World Meteorological Organization: Arthur, Bertha, Cristobal, Dolly, Edward, Faye, Gonzalo, Hannah, Isaias, Josephine, Kyle, Leah, Marco, Nana, Omar, Paulette, Renee, Sally, Teddy, Vicky, and Wilfred. 2 are used, 19 remain. Now, let's flip to the other side of the continent, because there's a symmetry here most coverage skips. El Niño suppresses Atlantic activity. It enhances Pacific activity. The same warm water and the same circulation changes that create hostile shear over the Atlantic create favorable conditions in the Eastern Pacific. NOAA's Eastern Pacific outlook, unchanged in this update, calls for 15 to 22 named storms, above average. 7 have already formed there this year. 2 became hurricanes, and 1 reached major hurricane strength. That's more than 3 times the Atlantic's output in the same period. The Central Pacific Basin, which includes Hawaii, is also expected to run above normal, with 5 to 13 named storms and tropical depressions. Add those together, and the picture isn't a quiet year for tropical systems globally. It's a redistributed year. The energy moved west. For anyone in Mexico's Pacific Coast states or in Hawaii, this is not a season to tune out. And it's a reasonable bet that a system spinning up off Mexico will eventually send moisture into the American Southwest, where the monsoon is already active. So what should you actually do with this forecast? If you live along the Gulf or Atlantic coasts, the honest answer is exactly what you'd do in any other year. Know whether you're in an evacuation zone. Most coastal counties publish maps, and a surprising number of people have never checked. Understand that a flood insurance policy typically takes 30 days to become effective, which means buying one after a storm is named accomplishes nothing. Have a plan for where you'd go and how you'd get there, and have supplies that don't depend on electricity. And take the rainfall threat seriously, even for weak systems. That's the specific lesson this season has already taught twice in Louisiana. To summarize where we stand, NOAA's August 6th update maintains a below normal Atlantic forecast. 7 to 13 named storms, 2 to 6 hurricanes, 0 to 2 major hurricanes, with a 75% probability of a below normal season. 2 storms have formed, Arthur and Bertha, both in the Gulf, neither reaching hurricane strength, with Arthur producing record Louisiana rainfall and Gulf Coast tornadoes. A strengthening El Niño is the dominant suppressing factor, increasing Atlantic wind shear, while Atlantic Ocean temperatures sit near average and the West African monsoon is neutral. The Eastern and Central Pacific are both forecast above normal, and the climatological peak of the Atlantic season is still roughly a month away. Quiet seasons are not safe seasons. They're just seasons with fewer storms, and it only takes one. We'll keep following it. Thanks for watching.